Gerrell Martin. Thank you, City Council members, for inviting me here to share my story as a low-income tenant in Philadelphia. As I share my experience, I ask you to remember that I'm here representing thousands of Philadelphians who are living a similar story as we speak. I am a wife, a mother of 6 beautiful children, and an employee who grabs overtime shifts just to provide for my family. But today, I'm here as a tenant. I moved into my house in October 2013, excited to create a home where I could raise my children to be happy and healthy. I have saved my money to provide the first month, last month, and security deposit. However, shortly after moving in, I realized that I did not get what I had bargained for. The cold was settling in, but when I went to turn the heat on, nothing happened. My numerous calls and pleading to my landlord went unanswered. I had to sleep with my children all bundled up, all in one room around a space heater, constantly anxious that one would wake up cold or that the space heater would malfunction. I was so relieved when the weather turned, but by this point, there were so many other problems. My ceiling was leaking, my roof had a hole, my windows wouldn't open or close properly, and the electrical sockets were uncovered and sparked. The list goes on and on. My landlord continued to ignore my pleas to make repairs. The only time I saw him was when he demanded rent. Although we weren't technically homeless, I felt homeless. My family couldn't live safely in a home that I had worked hard to pay for. During our time in this house, I gave birth to 2 very premature babies. My son was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and receives 16 hours of skilled nursing care per day. In addition to my concerns about my son's health, the poor housing conditions added to a new worry. Would my son's nurses, as mandated reporters, see the condition of our home, feel the lack of heat, and call DHS? I had to send my children to stay with others because I was so worried that my landlord's neglect would cost me my children. I felt anxious and hopeless, but I knew that I had to do something. I discovered 311 and immediately called for an L&I inspection. I finally felt like I was moving in the right direction. Since I moved in over 3 years ago, L&I has issued 5 different sets of violations. My home was declared a hazard and unfit for human occupancy. However, nothing happened. Nothing was enforced. Nothing was fixed. Those violations, as serious as they were, became meaningless as I continued to feel pressured to pay my rent in full. I was so afraid of winding up on the streets with my children, and I didn't know what more I could do. I wanted to fight, but I felt helpless. I didn't know my options, I didn't know my rights, or where to turn for help. I happened to be lucky enough to connect with lawyers who works with the medical legal partnerships at my son's pediatrician office. I had no idea that getting a lawyer was even an option, let alone a free one. When someone thinks of getting a lawyer, they think of all the money that it will cost. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and paying for a lawyer was just out of the question. However, having my pro bono lawyer changed everything. Together, we stood up for me and my kids and demanded that things change. However, within weeks of asserting my rights, my landlord filed an eviction paperwork. I did what I was supposed to do, but my landlord chose to kick me and my family out of our home because I stood up. L&I, the courts, allowed this to happen. My landlord, who had never given me a certificate of rental suitability, who had gotten a renter's license only days before filing the eviction, and who had numerous outstanding L&I violations, was suddenly in the power seat. It took 4 months of missed work, stress, and lots of uncertainty, but my lawyer was able to get my case thrown out. I often wonder what would have happened if I didn't get a lawyer. I don't think I would have fought. How do I fight without any information? Having my lawyers feels like having a security blanket. I went from sheer panic to ease. I no longer felt helpless. 3 years after the first L&I violation, my tears, my numerous court hearings, my heat is on, but many of my house repairs still need to be made. People often ask me, why didn't I leave? It's not that simple. Where would we go? I don't have a big support system, and I can't afford the costs of moving. But at the end of the day, I shouldn't have to leave because my landlord neglected her responsibilities. I shouldn't have to leave because L&I didn't pursue the violations against my landlord. I shouldn't have to leave because I chose to assert my rights. If I leave, another family will just move in and nothing will change. People get evicted. People get evicted every day in my neighborhood. It seems as a fact of life. You just get up and you keep going. But we're here today because no kid should have to grow up without heat in the winter or the water pouring through their living room when it rains. I'm here because my kids deserve better. Our city deserves better. Please help us in the cycle of substandard housing and unfair evictions in Philadelphia.